all squad. The suspect in the shooting at Elmer, Houston, is reported to be an unknown white male, approximately 30, slender build, height 5 feet 10 inches, weight 165 pounds, reported to be armed with what is thought to be a .30 caliber rifle. Well, we want a shooting out here. Where's it at? This is the news and police radio. What location? Between Marsalis and Buckley. It's a police officer. Somebody shot him. What's it? 914 Street. 78. It's in a police car. Number 10.
Captain Fritz told him, he said, you know, if something should happen to the president here, it'd be the worst thing that ever happened in Dallas, Texas. And they kind of, some of them, you know, made light of it. Nothing's going to happen, but it did. He came back and said, well, we just got word that he was involved in the president involved in a accident at the triple underpass. And so Chief Steve said, you take Sims and Boyd and you go to the school book depository. He says they think that's where the shots came from. He was putting him back and getting on the elevator. He said, well, Mr. Sims, if you and Mr. Boyd had been with him, I might not have shot him. So I've often wondered if he would have.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist Officer Foundation. Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give a platform to hear their incredible stories. We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us. Our community is small, but it is strong. We have differences. We don't always agree. And we all make mistakes. But together we can grow, we can heal, and we can learn from those mistakes. And together we can bridge the divide. Welcome back. Today I'm joined by the amazing Misty Van Kuren and our sound Jedi Knight, Danny Canetti. Today's episode, we're going to climb into a time machine and revisit a piece of history. History is a delicate record, a branch of knowledge that records a continuous series of events that shape the future. There's not a date and a single event on record that stands out in history that elicits such a vast range of reaction. From nostalgia, to suspicion, to tragedy, to reverence, and to nationwide reflection. November 22nd, 1963 lives in infamy in Dallas, Texas, as well as the entire world, and it truly shaped history. And still to this day, almost 60 years later, it's shrouded in controversy, mystery, and innuendo. But the result of that day's tragedy couldn't be more definitive. The nation lost a young president, and the Dallas Police Department lost a young officer. Today's guest lived through this incident, was affected on both personal and professional level. He hired on with the Dallas Police Department in 1952. He answered the very first call that was dispatched at the Northwest Division. As a member of the Dallas Police, Captain Fritz led elite homicide unit. He wore a unique Stetson hat. In that unit, over a 10-year span, touted a 98% clearance rate for arrest for homicides. They were Dallas's finest. The phrase Dallas finest is a perfect description for today's guest. It's my honor to sit down with Elmer Sonny Boyd. Elmer, thank you for being on. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Sonny, started in 1952. Can you describe how Dallas was back then?
Well, Dallas had a population around 475,000, somewhere between that and 490,000, I think. And, it was the war, World War II had ended, and things were getting back pretty much to normal. And at that time, I was working for the Lone Star Gas Company when I applied for the job of police officer for the Dallas. And things were going pretty good, but wages wasn't too good.
Right.
And when I went to work, I think the base pay was $255, but you had to work as an apprentice policeman for a year before you reached that level. Then after a year, you had a 3-month period of probation. Now, if you got fired before you ended your probation, that was it. You had no recourse. And so after that, they give you a choice to pay back your pension for 3 months. And so I did that. I had to get a loan to do it. But then you worked as a patrolman. You were working a 5.5 day week. I was trying to get say. Anyway, you work 5 days one week, 6 days the next.
Okay.
While I was in the police academy, every other weekend you rode observation. My first weekend, I rode with an accident investigator, Bob Winters, who later became deputy chief. But then the next week, you worked with a patrol out in patrol division. Well, it was a lot different then. And when you're a rookie, and during the afternoon, 4:30 to 6, you work traffic. Well, my first day, I went down to Akron and Main Street.
Yep.
I got off of the streetcar. You could ride the streetcars for free. So I got off of my streetcar. Well, up on the second floor over on your left, people were hollering out the window, and I didn't know what they were doing. And they said, "Oh, that man stole that blind man's accordion over, and he took off with this." So I saw him and just went around on Elm Street. I caught him before he got to St. Paul. Came back, had my accordion over my shoulder, and when I came around the corner, everybody started clapping. So,
Nice.
Anyway, a couple of weeks later, my niece and her husband, he was in the Marine Corps out in California. They called back and said, "I made the front page of the newspaper out there."
What newspaper was it?
It was Los Angeles something.
Really?
And said, "Fleet-footed rookie police officer captures the meanest man in Dallas."
Wow. Well, meanest man in Dallas.
Meanest
Again,
man
an
in
accordion.
Dallas.
It's changed a little bit. It's
Still
changed
a
a little.
blind man's accordion.
Yeah. Were you wearing your hat and tie then?
No, I was in uniform.
No, but as a hat, in uniform, did you wear a hat and tie?
I wore a cap.
Oh, okay.
Cap.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to wear a cap and uniform, man. But, a lot of things happen. That's one of my first things that happened.
That's great. Would you told me before you answered the first ever call at the Northwest Division. Can you describe that?
Well, Dallas took in West Dallas January 1st, 1953. I was working with M.O. Rogers. I was still pretty much a rookie. And I was working with him. So we pulled the first shift out there. And I remember the first call we got was a stabbing in West Dallas. Got out there, and my brother was working on the fire department. He was pulling the first shift on the fire department. So I remember the fire truck got stuck. 'Cause at that time, we only had 3 streets out there that were paved. The rest of them was mostly dirt. And they had their, that. But anyway, like I said, we answered the first call out there. They hadn't had any police out there at all at that time. And some of them, they would try you.
They still do. Northwest.
Yeah. Do they?
Yeah.
Well, every time I got a shorter partner, I got tried. But we always came out pretty good. And, of course, I was a little stronger then than I am now. But I tell you, I had to, things are different then. You know, when somebody jumped out and ran from you, you could catch them. You could chase them and catch. And I will say this, I never lost a foot race when they got them on the ground.
Good.
Captain Fritz used to tell the other officers now, if you think that man's got a rabbit in it, you put Elmer at the back and he'll catch him.
That's awesome.
So,
but you told me before about a robbery you walked in on a store. Well, can you describe that?
Now that was in over on the corner of Fitzhugh and Belmont in northeast Dallas.
Okay.
I was working a shotgun squad over there one night. It was the last night for that. I had worked it one time before. It was Mr. M's store. Mm-hmm. And after that first night, I told Pinky Me that worked in the office, he had security over some stores there. And he had asked me to work. So I told him, I said, Pinky, I don't work there anymore. I said, that's a 2-man store. And back there where you sit, and you can see the cash register, but you can't see the door. And I said, they can be in there on you before you know it. And you're sitting duck back there. Well, I was supposed to work one night, and I got a call, and they sent me to Denver on a kidnapping case, so I skipped it that night. Well, when I came back, I had worked a robbery before for the manager of that store at another store, and I had caught that he got cut up in a robbery out in East Dallas. Well, I told him, he said, well, can you work another night? I said, I don't want to work on the... So the manager of the store called me and asked me, he said, Elmer, if you just come work one more day, we've got private security coming in next day. So I said, okay. Well, about 10 o'clock, they were going to close at 11. Mr. Easley came back. He said, well, Elmer, you ready for that coffee? I said, yeah, I'll take a cup now. I've been up here. And he said, well, I'm going to step back in, and I'll go make it take about 5 minutes, but I'm going to get these bottles out. He had these little carts full of cold drink bottles. Well, I said, while you're doing that, I'm going to step in the restroom. Well, I went in there and just stayed long enough to do what I had to do. Mm-hmm. And he came back. I left the door cracked, and I heard him when he came back. He said something. I thought he was talking to me, and I heard a bottle rattling. So when I got through, I flushed the commode, and I stepped out, opened the door, and stepped in. And when I stepped out there, he had Mr. Easley down in front of the safe with a gun poked in his ear. Mm. And he turned around, and I just walked right into him. He put the gun up here and said, get back in the restroom. Well, I thought he was getting ready to kill us both, because we'd had some killed at that time in the back. Well, I backed up, and as I went in, I opened the door, come back this way, and he was still poking that gun. And as I stepped back, I grabbed that door and I slammed it and hit that gun, and I could see that hole come through that door just as plain as anything. just like slow motion almost. It went right over my left ear and into a water pipe behind me. And water started spewing out. Well, at that time, he backed off, and I heard some cold drink thing taken out, and it was Mr. Easley who jerked loose from him and turned those over. I thought it was him going out the door. Well, as I had a pistol under my belt here. My shotgun is over there. He was standing right by my shotgun up against the wall in between those cold drink things. And as I came out, I don't know, something just told me, I caught myself and I turned around and he was up against the wall and he fired another one right under my chin and hit a haydock block and made a place about that big in the wall there. And he had a hold of the door and he slammed it and went on out. The time I could get that door, he was going out the front. Well, when I got to my car was parked at the end of the building. Mm-hmm. As I got there, there's a car pulling away from the driveway, the curb out here, and one pulling out of the alley. I didn't know which one was which. Well, at the same time, I hear all this screeching out on Fitzhugh coming east. I looked up, here come a car without any headlights, and I thought it was his pickup man. And I almost took a shot at him. Yeah. And I realized them as being officers, as two FBI agents. They said they were sitting on a spot looking for a fugitive out of Florida, but I always believed that they had some information that place is going to be robbed. And so I stopped the car, it went down Belmont. Well, they stopped the one that went north on Bennett. We were just half a block apart. And I had a woman and a young kid with her, that one I stopped. But the time I got back to the store, it was ankle deep in water. I had to get the fire department out there. And, wow. Of course, I was lucky. I didn't get hit. So, but I had to stay up. It took me to about 3 o'clock to get all my paperwork done. So I went home. Next morning I was eating breakfast, and they came on television telling about some off-duty detective getting in a shootout out. And so Avon looked at me and my wife. He said, "Honey, was that you?" And I said, "Yes, that was me." She said, "Well, why didn't you wake me up?" Yeah, I didn't wake her up. I said, well, I need to get you upset. I said, "I'm okay." And so that was the end of that. That old boy, he ended up getting 25 years for shooting at me. Wow. Well, they had the judge admitted something, and a jury was ready to give him more. And they asked me if 25 years would be okay, and I said, well, because at that time, a life sentence, you could be out 7.5 years anyway, so that was fine with me, and we didn't have to go to court anymore. But when I got out, after I went to work for Euless, one morning I got up and I went out making my arraignment sheets for the judge. And look, here's Larry Rex Carmichael. I went in there and he sat back in his cell, and I said, "Larry, how long you been out of the penitentiary?" I said, "What did they got you for?" "Oh, they caught me smoking a joint down at Baby Dolls." See, I'm a disc jockey down there.
Well, it was probably a felony back then for a joint.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I said, "How long you been out of the penitentiary?" He said, "Oh, I've been out now 6 months." And I said, "You hadn't robbed any stores lately?" He said, "Look, mister, who in the hell are you anyway?" I said, "My name is Elmer Boyd." "Oh, Elmer Boyd, I thought we got our stuff sort of 10 years ago."
He thought you were coming back to settle up.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, that. But anyway, that was the end of that.
That's really a good conclusion to that.
Yeah.
That guy smoking a joint and baby dolls. He ended up in jail again.
Yeah.
Hey, Sonny, tell us how you got picked to go to homicide.
Well, I tell you, I had made, within 6 months' time, when I was working in West Dallas, I caught 2 groups of safe burglars, and with the safe in the car. I chased one into Irvin, and they run into a tree. There was 4 of them in the car. Well, when they hit that tree, they had one of these old keister safes about this big square. They'd chipped it out of concrete over in Fort Worth. You couldn't get in. They were taking it out there to a safe burglar that knew how to get in. So when it crashed into that, they all jumped out. If it hadn't, this safe went through and hit the steering wheel, pushed it out through the windshield. If he hadn't got out, it'd have killed him. And we caught him hiding in a brush pile down in a creek. And the other time, we got after this car. We saw it pull out of a service station out there at Singleton and Burnell, and without any lights. Well, I thought it was some of those Mexican kids out there just driving. So I flicked my lights on. When I did, they took off. We go out and we chased them, and they turned off over there where I-30 and Loop 12 is now. Mm-hmm. They went by through there. I was following them. They ran through a fence. I went through in behind them, and I caught the fence post. Then they went off in the old river thing. Well, they got in there. They were driving a 49 Oldsmobile. And so I went up, and that thing was, the engine racing, and smoke filled up in the car. And so I grabbed a hold of the door, and I said, "You better get out of there." I still thought it was kids. I got a hold of the door. "You better get out. You're gonna burn up in there." About that time, he blew the whole side of the car right over where my hand was. I had my shotgun, and about that time, that thing got off of that tree that it was on and went off down. I emptied my shotgun in the back of that car.
Oh, no.
Never hit. I went into the back seat. Most of my bullets went into the back seat. Oh. Never one of them got hit. They jumped out of the car after they'd gone about 50 yards, and they set up a command post out there. They all jumped out and run, and we had policemen all over everywhere. Well, they secured the command post, and they didn't get them. And after they called, a woman called and said, "You need to come back out here." Says, "One of those guys came down out of that tree right after y'all left."
He was hiding up there the whole time?
Yeah.
Wow.
So just before daylight, well, my partner and I, no boy had stole a car and was getting a push, and we caught one of them. Then we caught the other 3. They had a safe in the car too, and so then I had shortly before then they'd had a robbery out on Denton Drive at a cowboy store. Well, my partner and I, we were in the West Dallas housing project coming from Westmoreland down Vicker Street. And we got to Hampton, and they put out this description of the hijacker that hijacked the cowboy store. Said he was armed with a .45 automatic and it took $95, he said. Well, 2 of the officers had gone in that store, and he was locked up in the cooler, and they got him out. And they said we was driving an old model, dark-colored Ford. Well, we caught the light, and it turned red for Hampton as we're turning around, but they said he was wearing a white shirt. So I looked up, and here's this 49 Ford there. And I said, "Bob, you think I could be that hijacker?" He looked at us. I turned around and flicked on my lights. I got a hold of the door, told him to get out. He floorboarded that thing, and a fishtail, and like to knock me down when it come around. But anyway, he jumped in. Well, they get down there where the fire station is, 36 is on Northampton. he made a left on Life Street and he lost it. And time we got there, the right car door was open, and I heard him running. But there's a house over there where they had a light on, and he went between me and that light. And about the time I took a shot at him, I tripped over a wire down there and broke my flashlight. I couldn't find it. Bob Cosan was working with me, and he said, "Was that you, Elmer? Are you all right?" I said, "Yeah, I'm all right, but I lost my flashlight." And I started over, there's a big old oak tree there. I was going across there to meet Bob because I couldn't see what. But when I shot, I heard him holler. And when I got in the shade, I stumbled over him. He had fallen underneath that thing. And I stopped, and about that time, Bob got there, and I got a hold of him. I said, "Get up." He said, "I can't get up." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I'm hurt." And I looked at him, and I searched him and got $96 out of his right front pocket, and he had some 45 shells in his left. But anyway, I got him up. I tried to get him up. And he said, finally, he said, "Mister, I'm telling you the truth, I can't get up." I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "My foot." I said, "There's something wrong with my foot."
He shot himself.
Well, I took his shoe off and looked at his foot. There wasn't anything wrong with his foot. And finally, I turned around and tried to get, and as I got him by the belt, I hit him right square in the back of his, and it went into his right hip, and it paralyzed him.
Wow.
And so when it came time for trial, found out that he had pulled several other robberies, had used that same car in 2 weeks before, and went back and stole it off the same parking lot at Jackson and Irving down there.
Wow. So after that, is that when you went to homicide?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because I'd worked with a couple of guys that was in homicide. I was the first patrolman that went directly into homicide.
Did you have to go through an interview process with Captain Fritz?
No.
Really? He just pulled you? Okay.
No.
But it sounds like they knew your work.
He talked to the other people,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew I liked to work.
Well, for the listener, Captain Fritz, he spent 49 years with the Dallas Police Department, and he was known for being a just relentless interrogator. And
Wow.
he ran the homicide unit for several years, and police was his life. Mm-hmm. From your experience in dealing with him, what was he like as a boss?
I tell you, if you didn't mind working, he was a good boss. Now, before I went in there, I had several officers trying to get me. Said, "You wouldn't like to work for Captain Fritz." Said he's tough, and so I said, "Well, I've always wanted to be a homicide officer, and I'm going to go." Well, after I got in there, I found out those same people had tried to get in there and could, and he wouldn't take them. And they were trying to discourage me from going in there. But
Sonny, how old were you when you went to homicide?
I was, I was 30 years old.
Wow.
I just turned 30.
And you guys didn't just work murders, right?
We worked murders, rapes, robberies, kidnappings, extortions, and I had to investigate all suicides.
And then how many detectives were there?
I made the 10th one, where we had a lieutenant and 5 pairmen and secretary and a captain. Yeah,
What the suits and the Stetson hats? Is that what everybody wore on that unit?
Well, everybody wanted to.
Right.
They did.
That was like y'all's calling card, right?
Yeah. We wanted to be as much like him as we could.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He started that, right? He started that look.
Yeah,
Okay.
He did.
Well, it's iconic when it comes to Dallas, the history of Dallas police. You can't find any pictures of Captain Fritz in that homicide unit from that era and see that, and that stands out.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to have about twice a year we'd have a get together. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, you're okay.
Well, we'd all get together and we'd had a little can. We'd put money in it and we'd get buy steaks and have them cook them for us. We'd have a get together, and we used to call it the Cracker Jack Club. That's what he called some of us, Cracker Jack. Somebody asked him one time, so what kind of men you having? What is that? He said, oh, I got some Cracker Jacks. So that we always say we're going to have a Cracker Jack meeting. Well, now he was strict. Now he says when we got work to do, we work. But then if things, and I'll say this, I never asked him for a day off in my life that he didn't give it to me. He said, well, you know whether you got it coming or not. Well, he knew who was doing the work.
Right.
So we didn't just work on one case. We worked on everybody's case. The fact is, we probably cleared as many of the other cases. Sims and I, we worked together a long time, and he was a good detective too. How
long did y'all work together?
Well, it's almost 20 years. He retired a year before I did. He and I started to work in October the 15th, 1957.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sonny, I'm going to move ahead to 1963.
Okay.
Okay. The weeks leading up to the presidential visit, what was y'all's involvement with the planning for that?
Well, Captain Fritz and Mr. Sorrells from Secret Service and
Forrest
Sorrells,
yeah.
Yes. And see, I forgot. I know Mr. Bookout, Jim Bookout. He was with the FBI, and of course Sheriff Decker was sheriff at that time. They got together planning it, and originally Captain Fritz and Sims and I were scheduled to be in the parade about 3 or 4 cars back from John Connolly. And the night before, I wasn't at the meeting. Lieutenant Baker and Captain Fritz went out. They had somewhere around Lovefield, some place they had this meeting. Well, they decided that we wasn't going to be in the parade, Captain Fritz, Sim and I. They said, but we want y'all to meet him at the plane and get him to his limousine. And like I said, now, Lieutenant Baker's one that told me this, and I'm sure he told me right, because I know Lieutenant Baker. And he says, Captain Fritz told him, said, no, said if there's a crowd of people out there, you'll need uniform officers to get him through a crowd, so they'll pay more attention to uniform officers than they will plainclothes.
Yeah, suit.
Said, if we're not going to be in a parade where something should happen, we can be of some assistance. Will you get him onto the trademark, then we'll take care of him. Well, when we went to work, we thought we was going to be in a parade, and we wasn't, Sims and I. And so Captain Fritz told him, he said, you know, if something should happen to the president here, it'd be the worst thing that ever happened in Dallas, Texas. And they kind of, some of them, you know, made light of it. They, nothing's going to happen, but it did.
Was there a feeling of concern that something was going to happen?
Yes, at that time, feeling was running real high against the president at that time. And at that morning, they had a whole big page in a newspaper about it.
Treason.
Yes,
wanted for treason.
Yeah.
Saw that.
And so we went on and went to the trademark. And Chief Stevenson, he was deputy chief, I think, or might have been assistant chief, I forgot. But he and I and Captain Fritz were out there, and there was an FBI agent. I can't remember what his name was. Anyway, we were assigned to the head table where he's to make his speech.
Okay.
Well, 5 minutes before he was supposed to be there, Chief Steve said, Captain Fritz, you take your men, Y'all make your final security check here, and he's due here in 5 minutes. So just as we got started, he came back as well. We just got word that he was involved in the president involved in a accident at the triple underpass. And Captain Fritz says there's probably more to it than that. And so Chief Steve said, you take your men, you take Sims and Boyd, and you go to the school book depository. He says they think that's where the shots came from.
Did y'all go to about Parkland first at any point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What happened when you drove up to Parkland? What'd you see?
When we put he told us when we left there. He said they're on the motorcade's on the way to Parkland. Says y'all go to Parkland and see what you can find out. As we pulled out on the Stedman's at Industrial, here come the motorcade. We followed it to Parkland, and they pulled in as they were taking him out. Well, I got out of the car. I stayed with the car Sims, and Captain Fritz started walking up because Chief Curry met him. And that's when Chief Curry says, Captain Fritz, you take your men and go to the school book depository. That's where they think the shots came from. Well, at that time, Sheriff Decker was there. He said, Cap, can I get a ride back to my office with you? So he rode back to the school book depository.
Did you see the president when they were taking him out?
I saw him when they was taking him out, but I mean, I was way down from him.
Could you describe? They were just taking him out, putting him on a stretcher. Is that what happened?
Well, they were. I can't say what they were doing. They were already had him there and was taking him in.
And Jackie Kennedy was there as well.
Yeah, she was there too.
Okay. When you went straight from Parkland to the school book depository, what happened when you got there?
Well, as soon as we got there, Captain Fritz, Sims, and we got out. We stopped on every floor going up, and we found officers on each floor. And we went on up to the 7th floor. There's no freight elevator back there we had to go up on. And while we were up there, someone hollered up and says, we found some empty casings down here. So we went back down there, and I stayed with those until our crime scene people got there.
On the 6th floor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And while I was over there, Luke Mooney and I can't think of what the guy's name was, is over with him. Anyway, one of them hollered and told Captain Fritz, well, I think we found the rifle over here. It's in the northwest corner, down between some books and things over there. So Lieutenant Day went over. He picked up the rifle, and Captain Fritz took a live round out of it.
Wow! When you found the shell casings by that window, it was by that window, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice the sniper's nest set up? Could you tell that it had been used for?
Well, only thing I could tell, I found there was a brown paper sack with some chicken bones and things in it.
Because he ate there.
And so while we were there, we were there within 15 minutes. We'd accounted for everybody except Lee Harvey Oswald. And I really believe that if we'd have been in a parade, I don't believe he'd ever got out of the building. Because after we got there, nobody got out of the building. And there was one, Marion Baker, he stopped and talked to him on the way down up on, I think, the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, somewhere.
Yeah, he actually stopped Oswald.
Yeah, stopped and talked to him. Well,
he was in traffic, right? Baker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. He's deceased now, too. But then while we were there, that's when we found out that Officer Tippett had gotten shot over in Oak Cliff.
Okay, real quick on Officer Tippett, you had a personal relationship with
yes,
him, is that right?
He came the next school after I did.
Okay.
And we worked together in Oak Cliff. We worked after we were regular police officers. We worked together quite. See, at that time, if sometimes we didn't have enough to fill out, and we'd work together a lot. And Oak Cliff was a pretty close-knit group over there. And a couple of times we'd gone out to Keys Park, took the kids out there to picnic and thing, and his kids were about the same age as mine. We was growing up, and he was just he was a good officer. Tippett was a good officer.
Whenever you found out that he had been, did you find out that he had been shot and killed, or just shot?
I found out that the time we got to the office, we knew that he was dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you feel? What your friend?
Well, of course, it bothered me, because he and I have been close ever since he started work.
Yeah.
And, he just, I never feared when he was with me, because he was a good backup officer, I can tell you. But he just had some bad luck.
Yeah. He ran across the evil guy on the wrong day.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't very long before then. He and Dale Hankins answered a call on West Commerce at a bar over there about a suspicious person. And they went in here, sitting in a telephone booth, and J.D. got him up and asked him for identification. While J.D. was looking at his identification, he pulled out a pistol and poked it right in his head, and the thing snapped. He had, I forgot whether it was rimfire ammunition and a centerfire gun or vice versa, but the thing snapped. And when Dale killed him, Dale killed a hijacker.
Wow.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, he hadn't been back to work too awful long. He and D.H. Smith was over on Kings Highway and answered a disturbance call. And as they went in, this guy was, he'd run everybody out, but they didn't tell him that he had anything. But they said, so as they went in, he stabbed Smith in the shoulder. J.D. grabbed him. He hit him in the stomach with the ice pick, then hit him in the knee with the ice pick. And that ice pick broke off flesh with his kneecap there. They went to Parkland. They sent him home a couple of days. His knee started swelling up. That thing got it infected, and I think they had to take his kneecap off.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're talking about Officer Tippett, because that day is known for President Kennedy.
He was a real hero that day.
Yes,
he was a real hero.
Yeah, if he wouldn't have given the ultimate sacrifice, there's no telling when Lee Harvey would have been found after that. Whenever you're at the book depository when you find that out, right?
Yes,
okay.
we had an address over in Irvin on him.
Mm-hmm.
Fact is, we were getting ready to go to Irvin when Sheriff Decker called, sent word over there that our office was trying to get in touch with us, and so that address in Irvin was just 2 blocks from where my nephew lived.
Okay.
I mean 2 houses from where my nephew lived. I lost him last December. He was 90 years old, my nephew.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But, and then when I got to the sheriff's office, I called the office, and Lieutenant Baker was there. He said, I think we have the man that shot Tippett on the way in. And while we were talking, they brought him in. And he said he gave the name of Lee something.
Lee Idell or something like that.
Alex Hydell is what
Alex
he gave.
Idell, yep.
But he was, some of them called him Lee. And that's why, so we were straight up there. And when I got there, Kenneth Lyons, one of the patrolmen, was sitting in the interrogation room with him. Captain Fritz said, I told me to get him and bring him in here. Well, we got him out, and Captain Fritz talked to him, and we're getting a show up ready downtown. And that's when, before we went down there, I searched him. I figured he'd been searched, but I found 5 live .38 shells in his pocket.
You searched Oswald and found those?
And I said, what are you doing with these? Well, I just had them.
Right. Did what was your impression of him when you first met Oswald?
Well, he really just acted normal. I mean, he wasn't excited, and I asked him we could bring him in. When we brought him in and set him down, well, I was waiting for them to come in, and I said, "What happened to you?" He says, "I struck an officer, and he struck me back, which he should have." And I thought that was unusual for an answer to give. Yeah, I said, "I struck an officer, and he struck me back, which he should have." And he would talk to you about anything except the shooting ticket and the president. He said, "I hadn't shot anybody." And because he told us, where he met his wife, Marina, over in Minsk, Russia. Mm-hmm. He talked about going down to being at Fair Play for Cuba down in New Orleans, but he denied going to Mexico. And that's when Jim Hosty, the FBI agent, came in. Mm-hmm. And, FBI, he flipped up his badge and he said, "I'm Special Agent Jim Hosty from the FBI." And that's when he got up. I had his handcuffed in front of me. He was standing at the other end of the desk like he sat down on him. And he got up and he hit that desk and he said, "You don't have to tell me who you are. You're the one that's been out there accosting my wife while I wasn't at home, and I don't appreciate it." And that's the only time that he
got emotional.
Yeah. Except one other time when we were coming out of one of the show-ups down there, somebody asked him, "Why did you shoot the president?" I didn't shoot the president. They tried to make a patsy out of me, and that's when he was holding up.
Oh, the hammer and the sickle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got that picture today.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that picture right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that you in that pic? I'm going to be posting this picture when I release it.
Oh, yeah. The first time I got that picture, first time I ever saw it, a guy from Dublin, Ireland sent it to me. Had a big old poster, this big. Woman asked me, he wrote me a real nice letter. He wondered if I would sign that. He wanted to put it up in his brother's pub in Dublin, Ireland.
Wow.
So I sent it back to him. Yeah.
At what point did the Secret Service and FBI try to take over that investigation? And did y'all work well with them?
Well, some of them we did. There was one or two of them, that I didn't, because he was trying to get my notes and I wouldn't give them to him.
Oh, yeah?
He didn't know they were. When I left, I kept a notebook, and when I left that day, I took it, put it in the bottom of the lieutenant's drawer over there. Was going to get it when I come back. So I came in, and here's this FBI agent over there going through all the lieutenants. And I raised those books. I looked, and I got mine. He said, "Wait a minute, I hadn't got." I said, "This is mine. You don't get this." He didn't get it either. Yeah, I really didn't care for anything that had in it, but he didn't. It wasn't his business.
Did Captain Fritz? Did he get along well with him?
He got along with them most of the time. He got along with them pretty good. Now there's some of them before that time that they wasn't getting along too good. But after Jim Bookout started coming up there pretty regular, well, we got along good with him. And it seemed like things changed, just before this thing.
Right. Did you hear anything about what was going on at Parkland with them wanting to remove President Kennedy's body and not leave it at the end? I know there was a fight that went on with the medical examiner and the Secret Service of them wanting to remove the president's body, and at the time the state law mandated that the body stay in Texas because it was a homicide in Dallas.
Yes, I heard about that. I mean, I wasn't involved in it, but I felt like that the chief didn't take a strong enough stance against it.
Chief Curry.
Yes, and I really think if we'd have still had Chief Hansen, I think it would have had a lot harder trouble, more trouble getting him out.
Well, I've heard and read that it got pretty physical up there at Parkland. A lot of shoving and pushing and shouting.
Yeah, well, I'm just glad I wasn't up there.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Just glad.
So,
I don't like us shoving and pushing. I
Yeah.
had some of that out in the hall out there.
yeah, right.
And
Trying to get Oswald through the hall for the
Yeah.
press conference.
And I had some of it with LBJ one time down at the Dolphins Hotel.
Really?
Yeah, that's when they spit on Lady Bird and was calling him Judas. And
Yeah. Wow.
I thought we were really going to have it. I was right in the middle of that. I had LBJ on one side and here his wife on the other side, and up on that stairway. I know what was fixing to happen, but I got him off.
Back to when you had Oswald, when you doing the initial interviews, at what point did they decide we're going to go ahead and move him to the jail? And then were you what was your role when they decided that?
Well, really, we were scheduled to be with him, but we worked till 3:30 that morning and went home. And they had decided that they were going to move him that night, I think, just before midnight. And they asked me and Sims said, "Well, y'all want to go home and come back, or you want to stay?" And I said, "Well, we've been down here all day. Why don't we just stay?" We decided to stay and let y'all go home. And so that's what we did. And till the next morning, then I was out at my mother-in-law's and watching it on television, me and my father-in-law. And so when he came out there, Ruby jumped out there and shot him. I told my father-in-law, "That looked like old Jack Ruby." And sure enough, it was. And, of course, they knew where I was because I had to tell them, and I had to go back to work. And I got back to work, and then Sims and I had to handle Jack Ruby then.
So y'all knew Jack Ruby pretty well?
Mm-hmm,
How did you know him? What was your relationship with that guy?
We had all answered calls to his old place. He had problems, he'd call the police. He liked police officers.
The Carousel Club?
Carousel Club, and he had an old club down on South Irving, old Silver Spur used to be down there. And
there's strip clubs,
I think
right?
He had one out in Oak Lawn.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think he had one out there too.
So whenever...
I never was in that in Oak Lawn.
When you found out, when you saw that he shot him, did you immediately just get up and go back to work?
I called, and they told me to call. If something happened, to call, and I called, and they told me to get on back to work.
Okay.
So we went across. Sim and I went. He had a little dog, and I think we went across the parking lot. The first thing he said when Sims was getting him out, he said, "Mr. Sims, are you and Mr. Boyd mad at me?" Sims said, "No, Jack, we're not mad at you, but what you did is a terrible thing." He said, within 2 hours, we'd captured the one that shot the president and Officer Tippett, and you're just making us look bad. And that's when he said, "Well, I just didn't want to see Jack and the rest of the family to have to come back to court." Then, as we was putting him back and getting on the elevator, he said, "Well, Mr. Sims, if you and Mr. Boyd had been with him, I might not have shot him." So
Wow.
I've often wondered if he would have.
Yeah,
And
we'll wonder that too.
yeah, it is.
So were you running or part of the investigation whenever? Because now he is a homicide suspect himself. Were you? Well, did you find out initially that Oswald had passed?
I found out that. Well, the time I got to work, I knew it. I don't remember if I heard it on the radio or what, but...
So you knew that Ruby was now the homicide suspect for killing Oswald.
Mm-hmm.
And did you lead that investigation?
No.
Okay. that you're going back to that Ruby's dog. He left that little dog in the car while he went to the Western Union, right? To send money to one of his employees.
Yeah, he just. He couldn't have planned the thing because it's supposed to already happen before then.
Yeah. Going back to that, the Oswald being moved. It was initially he was going to be part of it was going to get moved in an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
Well, the armored vehicle would not fit down the ramp.
Yeah.
And so then that's at the last minute they had to change it to that sedan that they were backing in. And the person backing in didn't get in a certain place because if you see the video of Oswald getting shot, you see Captain Fritz come out and he's looking around for the sedan.
Yeah.
And that's when Ruby had his opportunity.
Yeah.
Hey, Sonny, do you remember what he shot him with? What kind of weapon?
What kind of weapon was
that Jack used?
he had? It was a 38. It was a 38. Yeah. Yeah, I think Joe Cody claimed that he bought it for him.
Really?
He may have. He did, but I won't say that.
All right. Ruby was known as a hothead, right?
Well, he could be hot-headed. I mean, he wasn't a big gangster like I tried to make him out.
Yeah.
He might have been a wannabe, but he...
Right. I've heard that.
Yeah. Well, the night of the assassination, of course, we're all working, and long about 10 o'clock, Jack Ruby called up there and wanted to talk to me, or Sims one. Sims talked to him, and he said, "This is Jack Ruby. I'm down here at Sal's Turf Bar. I had to make up 30 sandwiches, and I want to bring them up there to you because I know you've been working." Sims said, "No, Jack," said, "we've been swapping out. We've been going over to the hotel." And so we would, okay. He brought them down and gave them the news people.
Is that how he got into the news conference? Ruby was actually in Oswald's news press conference.
He was one down there because I saw him up on the desk thing, standing back. Excuse me.
He was actually posing as a reporter. He actually asked a question of Oswald.
Well, I couldn't tell who was asking the question down there. I was up there with Oswald. I was up at the stage with Oswald at all the show-ups.
How was he on the stage when he was doing that press conference? What was his demeanor? I saw it, but you were right there with him. What was his demeanor?
Oh, well, he was just kind of like others, except at one time they asked him something and he kind of snapped back, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But when he was going out is when they started. See, before we went home that night, well, we went up there a little before 12 o'clock, as best I remember. Anyway, Chief Curry says they want to take him down to the news so the news people could see that he was ever all right. So he said, "I want all my homicide officers down in that newsroom or the show-up room he said, I want all of you down there." And he told me and Sim, "Now, if anybody tries to touch him or anything, you take him out of there and get him and put him in jail immediately." Well, that's where we were down there about 5 minutes, and sure enough, that's where, as soon as we took him and put him in jail. And that's the last time we had anything to do with him that night.
So
we worked till 3:30 both nights after that happened.
What did he say was the reason that he shot Oswald?
Well, he said that the reason, he said, "I just didn't want Jackie and the Kenda family to have to come back down here to court."
So he was going to get justice right there.
I don't believe that. I think he thought he was going to be a big hero. That's what I think.
Yeah, I could see that. Did you have to testify in Jack Ruby's case?
No.
No?
I didn't have to testify in it. Thank goodness.
Whenever he was shot on live TV, when Oswald was shot, what was the reaction from Captain Fritz and Chief Curry? What what was their reaction
Well,
that you heard of?
I wasn't in. I know the chief caught some flack over it. I don't think Captain Fritz caught any, but people, got some calls from all over the country, and some of them blaming Dallas for getting the president killed and all of that.
It was a dark time for Dallas. Several years after that.
Oh yeah. Once in a while, you stop somebody, they had to make something. I just look over it, but they pay no attention to them.
Well, as far as how Dallas police were looked at after that incident, it was
for several years.
Several years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it across the world, really. They looked at Dallas, Texas. They put Dallas, Texas on the map.
Yeah.
Was Chief Curry? He said he took flack. Was it? Do you believe that they believed he was incompetent, or just a?
I don't know. They just wanted to blame
somebody for everything that happened. Yeah.
Of course, it could have happened anywhere. If you want to kill somebody, you can kill them, and
of course,
if you don't care about getting caught.
Sonny, after this, how did it affect you?
Well, for several years, I wouldn't talk about it. Sims and I, we didn't talk about it for several years. And then I got to reading about a lot of things when something happened in the newspaper. They would talk about something happened to some of the officer. And there were so many things that and I knew that wasn't true because it's supposed to happen when I was there at the time. And but since then, like I said, I always people want to talk about it, and I've gotten things from all over the world, and I'm still getting stuff.
Yeah, we're still here bugging you about it. It's almost 60 years later.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I still went to work, did my job, and I know some people, they make snide remarks, but I just let them go in one ear and out the other.
Right. You have to.
Yeah.
Do you think there could have been anything different in preparation that could have been better?
Yes, I think that news conference was a bad deal.
Yeah,
and to tell them when we're going to transfer them and everything, that night when Sims and I was getting off the last night, Sims said, Elmer, says, right now, you and I could get him. We could get him to the county and put him in there. Nobody ever know it. And and I said, yes. And then tomorrow we'll be looking for another job.
Right. Why did they do that news conference?
I haven't. That was some of their...
Chief Curry?
Yeah.
And I'm surprised the FBI and the Secret Service even would allow that.
Well, they knew about it, so...
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was bizarre. Even years later, when I was growing up, I was obsessed with the Kennedy assassination. I grew up in Dallas, so a lot of people here, my family, my mother had a scrapbook with the original newspaper clippings from that time,
Yeah.
and I still have it. But after seeing that press conference, even before I was in law enforcement, I thought, why do they have him up there doing interviews in front of a crowd? It was strange.
It was unusual.
Everything was unusual that happened that day.
Yeah.
How did your career go after this incident?
Well, it went on, and I just kept working my murders, and then in 1969, they brought the International Association of Police Officers in, and they did a survey of our department. They sent a sergeant from Chicago with 10 years service in the traffic division to survey our department.
Okay.
And they, only thing they could criticize us for, that most of us wore white hats. And I thought that, but anyway, They didn't think that it was necessary always for the detectives to go to the scene of a murder or offense. Well, that's where you make your cases at the scene.
You have a trained eye that a patrolman would not.
Yeah. Well, just to give you an example, I was over in West Davis. There was an anesthesiologist worked for Methodist Hospital one night. He was stabbed several times, and they found him there. And while I was there, two old ladies across the street said, well, he left over the weekend, and he came back, had a little white car. And so I was looking around, and I found a title on a little Chevy 2, one of those 62 model Chevy 2s, the smaller Chevrolet. And I called our department, and I was going to put a pickup out on that car. Oh, we can't do that. Said, you don't know if he's going to be in there or somebody else. I said, well, that's the only thing I have. So I turned around and called DPS, and they put it out. Well, then I got a good chewing out about it. Well, while I was talking to them, they picked them up in Decatur over 3 of them in that car.
Wow.
It was an old boy I'd handled when I first went into homicide first, robbing an old lady out on Singleton. So, yeah. Well, then they thought I did a good job. They thought I did a good job.
Because it turned out good, so that, it turned out good.
It was good,
yeah.
But it was bad for me. After I took, I got my ass chewed out.
I had to ask you about the Warren Commission. Did you testify in the Warren Commission?
Yes, I
did. You did? Okay, how did that go?
It went pretty good.
Pretty good. It's a historic trial.
I tell you, it went better for me than it did 1 or 2. If it had treated me like 1 or 2, it wouldn't have been so good.
Yeah. Who do you know who it went bad for?
I know one thing, that one of them was P.T. Dean.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was his role?
Well, he was over there when they captured Oswald, I think, and he...
Oh, in the Texas movie theater?
Yeah. Well, I forgot what all of his role. He had a good bit. I read up one book in there. I don't know what all of it is true or not, but I've only read 2 books.
Okay.
I started on some more, but I couldn't go. No, I tell you, see, they were, he was down at the basement there.
Okay.
And he's talking about when Ruby came down, and that FBI said, no, you didn't see that. No, you didn't see that. He said, well, I damn sure did.
He saw Ruby Camp come in the basement?
Come in, and he called him a liar. And so P.T. did, well, this interview's over. He got up, walked out.
Really?
Yeah, he called him a liar.
Why do you think they wanted him to say that he didn't see that Ruby came in the basement?
I don't know, because other people saw him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they knew him. They knew Ruby.
Yeah.
How did the assassination change the culture on Dallas Police Department? And what was the morale having the president killed?
Well, it was low, because, everybody, it was a bad situation, just to have something like that happen here in Dallas. And, of course, and like I said, people from all over the country. Well, there's one, I think, from Philadelphia. He called in congratulating us.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and Hoover called down here at that time, too.
J. Edgar? Yeah.
No, they, but, it wasn't, like I said, I don't care how much security you have. If somebody going to do something, they can do it.
Sure. If they have a will, they're going to find a way.
They can do it.
Sonny, you've worked a lot of crime scenes, right?
I worked a
And
good.
they're the telltale sign, correct?
Pardon?
They tell all the story. Would you say that about a crime, like when you worked your crime scenes?
Yeah. Well.
Because you said earlier that some people said that you shouldn't go out to the crime scene.
Oh yeah. I always went to crime scene. That's where I got most of my information.
Well, you had the rare opportunity to look at the crime scene on this.
Yes.
Is there anything that stands out that you remember when you went up in that room where this crime occurred?
There's a lot can come from physical evidence, even back then,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What stood out at the JFK murder scene that for you, that if you remember anything that stood out?
Oh, let me see. Oh, so one thing that stood out that I remember, they sent me down to the Records Bureau to look up something. I forgot what it was now. I might have been checking on Oswald, I don't know. But anyway, Mr. Sarles came in.
Or the CIA, Secret Service?
Sarles, yeah. And we rode up on the elevator together. And he walked into Captain Fritz's office, and the first thing he said to Captain Fritz is, Captain Fritz, as long as I'm in charge of the Secret Service here now, you and your men will never be cut out of another parade. I didn't know what he was talking about, and I asked got talking to Lieutenant Baker. He said, I'll tell you what he was talking about. He was talking about out there last night when they kind of made fun of him when he mentioned that something might happen here, and told him it'd be the worst thing that ever happened in Dallas, Texas if it did.
Right.
And that's what it was about. Then, as I was walking in, then here comes Jim Hosty, and he said, who y'all got in here? And I told him, Lee Harvey Oswald. He said, damn it, I knew he was here. Then he denied saying it. But Lieutenant Rebel and Jackie Brown, they heard him too.
Yeah, there is stories out there that Hosty, he went to Oswald's house and he talked to Marina several times, and that's what made Lee so angry.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, and he there's stories of him burning his notes basically Oswald went to the FBI building, wrote a threatening letter to Hosty and left it there, and he left it in his desk drawer. Prior to that, have you heard that?
I heard something about it.
Yeah, and he burned the letter.
No, he got transferred pretty quick.
Yeah, he got transferred really quick.
Yeah. Oh, Lord.
How many years were you and Sims partners?
Well, he retired in 76. I retired in 78. First part of 70. We were about 19, almost 20 years.
So you guys were a great duo. So I'm going to ask you something, and all the listeners want to know this. So I trust you guys.
Okay.
You guys have all this experience in Dallas.
Well.
You're iconic.
Oh, no.
So during this investigation, based on the crime scene that you saw, your experience, do you feel like that Oswald acted alone?
I do.
You do?
I sure do.
Tell me why you think that.
Well, really, I sat in there, like I said, I was sat in on 75 to 85% of the interrogation, maybe more. And just from his actions, he was a loner. And I just wish that Captain Fritz could have talked to him by himself and with one of us in there. And I don't know, I just feel like he was loner. He didn't like anybody. He didn't like John Connally because John Connally was Secretary of the Navy and tried to get him to stay in Russia. And I think he acted alone. I don't try to change anybody's opinion, but my feeling is I think he acted alone.
Sonny, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up.
Well,
I want to thank you for taking the time out to meet with us. It's an honor to sit down with you. You're part of history, whether you want to admit it or not. It stands out, and it's quite incredible. You've had an incredible life and career, and you were part of, historically in Dallas and not only the world, one of the biggest events that ever happened in our lifetime. And thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
well,
Sonny, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Badge Number 840.
I thank y'all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your service.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Give up on you. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.